Videos, we have seen the external features of the cerebral hemisphere and we have also seen the four lobes of the cerebral hemisphere. In this video, we will be seeing the sulci and gyri of the cerebral hemisphere. What are sulci? Sulci are nothing but the depressions, okay, on the surface of the cerebral hemisphere. What are gyri? Gyri are the elevations. The elevations are called as gyri and the depressions are called as sulci. Why do we have sulci and gyri? Because there is limited space within the bony skull. So this enlarged brain should be accommodated within that limited space, and so it is thrown into folds. These folds form the sulci and the gyri. Now we will see the important sulci and gyri in the supralateral surface. This surface is supralateral surface. We have already seen the lateral sulcus. Okay, lateral sulcus. So we know that lateral sulcus actually begins on the inferior surface. It's the stem of the lateral sulcus. Then on reaching the supralateral surface, it's going to divide into the anterior horizontal, anterior ascending and posterior rami. Posterior ramus is the longest. It is about 7.5 centimeters. And we probe this and ask the content of the lateral sulcus. Then you will be telling the answer as middle cerebral artery and deep middle cerebral vein. So that's about the lateral sulcus. Now come to this another important sulcus which you have already seen. So this is the central sulcus. Central sulcus begins in the uppermost part of the medial surface, then it will cut the supromedial border, then it descends downwards and forwards and ends just above the lateral sulcus. That is how we will identify the central sulcus. Having seen the central sulcus, see there is one gyrus immediately anterior to the central sulcus. This gyrus is called as precentral gyrus. This gyrus is precentral gyrus. Precentral, in front of the central sulcus. So this is the precentral gyrus. Anterior to the precentral gyrus, you see another sulcus that is called as precentral sulcus. So you have the central sulcus, precentral gyrus and precentral sulcus. You know that the central sulcus is going to separate the frontal lobe and the parietal lobe, which means the precentral gyrus is present in the frontal lobe. Okay, so central sulcus, precentral gyrus, precentral sulcus. Now we come behind the central sulcus. Behind the central sulcus, you see another gyrus that will be called as post-central gyrus because it is behind the central sulcus. Posterior, so post. This is the post-central gyrus. Now see this sulcus, this is the post-central sulcus. Post-central gyrus and post-central sulcus are in the parietal lobe. Now, what is the importance of this precentral gyrus and post-central gyrus? Precentral gyrus is primary motor cortex, area number 4 of Brodmann. Okay, Brodmann area number 4. This is the primary motor cortex, is the highest center for control of all motor activities. That is precentral gyrus. It is in the frontal lobe. Now, what about the post-central gyrus? Post-central gyrus is primary sensory cortex. Primary sensory cortex. It is area number 312 of Brodmann. 3 is closest to the central sulcus, then parallel to that you will have 1, next we will have 2. 312. You should not say 1, 2, 3. You should say 312 in that order only. So 312 are Brodmann areas and this is the primary sensory cortex. So anterior in the precentral gyrus we have the primary motor cortex and in the postcentral gyrus it is the primary sensory cortex. Now are you able to appreciate that the central sulcus is separating the primary motor from the primary sensory, and so this is called, this central sulcus is called as limiting sulcus. A limiting sulcus is one which separates two functionally different areas. So this central sulcus separates the primary motor cortex anteriorly from primary sensory cortex posteriorly, and so the central sulcus is called as the limiting sulcus. Okay, so that is the important sulci on the supralateral surface. So you have the lateral sulcus, the central sulcus, precentral sulcus, postcentral sulcus, precentral gyrus and postcentral gyrus. Other sulci here in the frontal lobe, you will have two sulci, superior and inferior frontal sulci, which will be dividing the frontal lobe into 3 gyri, superior frontal gyrus, middle frontal gyrus and inferior frontal gyrus. Similarly, in the temporal lobe, you will be having 2 temporal sulci, superior and inferior temporal sulci, which will be dividing the temporal lobe into 3 gyri, superior, middle and inferior temporal gyri. So all these are only more of theoretical. It's very difficult to appreciate exactly in this So that we will be seeing in the PowerPoint. Most important sulci here will be lateral sulcus and the central sulcus. Gyri will be the precentral gyrus and the postcentral gyrus. Now let's come to the medial surface, the sulci gyri in the medial surface. Before we go to the sulci gyri, appreciate this structure. This structure is the corpus callosum. Told you this is the one which is going to bind the two cerebral hemispheres to each other. So this is the corpus callosum. This is the largest commissure. Largest commissure of the brain is the corpus callosum. See, above the corpus callosum, you are able to see another sulcus, that is the callosal sulcus. Corpus callosum, above that, so we have named it as callosal sulcus. Above the callosal sulcus, you can see a gyrus that is called as cingulate gyrus. Cingulate, C-I-N-G, okay, cingulate gyrus. Above the cingulate gyrus, you will have a sulcus that is called as cingulate sulcus. Corpus callosum, callosal sulcus, cingulate gyrus, cingulate sulcus. Above the cingulate sulcus, I want you to observe a very important area. See, this is the central sulcus. Can you appreciate it? Come to the medial surface. Trace it to the medial surface. Around this central sulcus, you have an area that is called as paracentral lobule. That is called as paracentral lobule. Can you see? See, the cingulate sulcus is limiting the paracentral lobule. What is the importance of this paracentral lobule? See, the paracentral lobule, see, because it is lying around the central sulcus, anteriorly it will have motor cortex, posteriorly it will have sensory cortex. This paracentral lobule present on the medial surface of cerebral hemisphere is the highest center for control of micturition and defecation. Highest center for micturition and defecation is the paracentral lobule, which is present on the medial surface of the cerebral hemisphere. So it lies around the central sulcus on the medial surface and it is limited by the cingulate sulcus. Okay, this is the most important gyrus here. Okay, now next to the paracentral, we'll come to the occipital lobe. Here, this is the occipital lobe because we know that this is the parieto-occipital sulcus, which is going to separate the parietal lobe from the occipital lobe. So this whole thing is the calcarine sulcus. Okay, this calcarine sulcus. Calcarine sulcus is a very important sulcus in the occipital lobe. Why? Because on either side of calcarine sulcus, you are going to have the primary visual cortex, which is Brodmann area number 17. Okay. On either side of the calcarine sulcus, you will have the primary visual cortex area number 17. Then outer to the area 17, you will have area 18. Then beyond that, you will have area 19 on either side. So area 18 and 19 are visual association cortex. Visual association cortex. 17 is primary visual cortex. 18 and 19 are visual association cortex. So in this surface, you should know the corpus callosum, the callosal sulcus, the cingulate gyrus, cingulate sulcus, paracentral lobule and the calcarine sulcus. Okay. Now let's come to the inferior surface. This inferior surface, anterior part we know it is called as the orbital surface because it's lying over the roof of the orbit. Now this orbital surface has got a H-shaped sulcus. This H-shaped sulcus is called as the orbital sulcus. Because this sulcus is H-shaped, it will have 4 gyri: anterior, posterior, medial, lateral, orbital gyri. H-shaped orbital sulcus, anterior orbital gyrus, posterior orbital gyrus, medial orbital gyrus and lateral orbital gyrus. Now here the medial most part in the orbital surface, you will have one straight gyrus. That gyrus is called as gyrus rectus because we all know that rectus means straight. So this gyrus is gyrus rectus. Okay. Now come to this part. This is the tentorial surface. The tentorial part of the inferior surface. Now here, can you appreciate one U-shaped bend here? This U-shaped part is called as the uncus. Uncus is a U-shaped end of this parahippocampal gyrus. This gyrus here is called as parahippocampal gyrus and this is the uncus. Uncus is a U-shaped bend. Okay, so this is the parahippocampal gyrus. Now, immediately lateral to the parahippocampal gyrus, you are able to see another sulcus. This sulcus, can you see the sulcus here? This sulcus is the collateral sulcus. What is this collateral sulcus? Collateral sulcus is separating the Parahippocampal gyrus. From this gyrus is the occipitotemporal gyrus. Occipitotemporal gyrus. Okay. So this is the parahippocampal gyrus, and this is the collateral sulcus. This collateral sulcus on the inferior surface and the calcarine sulcus on the medial surface are examples of complete sulci. What is a complete sulcus? A complete sulcus is one which is so deep that it can produce an elevation within the cavity of the brain. The cavity of the brain is the ventricle. Ventricles contain cerebrospinal fluid. So this calcarine sulcus and the collateral sulcus will produce an elevation in the ventricle. So these two sulci are called as complete sulci. What are the two complete sulci? Calcarine sulcus and collateral sulcus. What type of sulcus is central sulcus? It is a limiting sulcus because it is separating two functionally different areas. So these are the important sulci and gyri on the three surfaces of the cerebral hemisphere. The spotters will be the lateral sulcus, central sulcus, precentral gyrus, postcentral gyrus, the calcarine sulcus. Okay, these will be the spotters. Thank you.